The XDM server has two major components that are used to store data. Those are the database and the vault. While the database stores metadata of the XDM server, the vault stores the design data, similar to files on a file server. The relationship between the database and the vault is very strict. No manipulation should be done to any of them externally to the XDM server and the utilities. Although technically we are talking about two separate components, from a logical perspective, the database and the vault should be thought as a single entity to ensure data consistency. Failure to keep these in sync will lead to data corruption and lost data. As for the physical aspect, you should locate your vault and database on a fast data access disk with a large capacity to store all your design data. By default, the vault resides on the same host machine as the XDM server. However, if you insist, you can locate the vault on a remote machine and use NFS to access it. If your architecture use case has the data remote to the XDM server, make sure you use high-speed backbone with a minimum of 100 MB per second. There are three sections within the XML file to define the vault and the database: vault configuration, embedded database configuration, and Oracle configuration. For the vault, use vault configuration and mainly define the location of the vault storage path. I want to remind you that if you are configuring the vault on NFS, make sure you correctly define the user who will access the NFS under the server user section. For the default embedded database, we use the embedded database configuration section. And if you are using an Oracle database, you should use the Oracle configuration section. Besides the server and the port, you need to define the service name, default and temp table spaces, username and password that your DBA had already configured for you on your Oracle database. In addition, you will need to define the location where you installed the Oracle Instant Client. Without Instant Client, the XDM server will not be able to communicate with the Oracle database. This is the time to list some differences between using the embedded database and using the Oracle database. As you just saw, the configuration is different. By default, the embedded database will be used. However, once you add Oracle configuration to the XML, only Oracle will be used and all the embedded definitions, if any, are ignored. Another difference between the two is that while the installation and the deployment of the embedded database is automated for you, this is not the case with Oracle. When using Oracle, you will have to manually install the database, manually create the table spaces, the user, and the privileges, and you will have to continue maintaining and managing the Oracle server by yourself. A good example of the different automation between the two databases is the backup and restore process. If you are using Oracle, you will have to manually run the backup process of your database, while with the embedded database, the backup of the database is part of the fully automated backup procedure. The same automation applies to restore. It is important to understand that using Oracle requires not only additional knowledge and workforce, but may also require some license considerations since Oracle is a commercial product. This video was about the database and the vault configuration. We discussed mainly about the Oracle database configuration because in order to use it, there are many prerequisites that you need to take care of. We explained that you can configure the vault not only to be on the local XDM server machine, but also on NFS.